The morning sun cast long shadows across the palace grounds as Kate Middleton stood at the tall windows of her private sitting room. Her fingers traced the cool glass, while she watched the gardeners tending to the rose bushes below. These same roses had bloomed for decades, witnessing countless royal moments of joy and sorrow. Today they seemed to understand the weight of what was coming. William entered quietly, his footsteps soft on the Persian carpet. He had been up since dawn, pacing the corridors and making phone calls that grew more difficult with each conversation. The decision they had made together still felt surreal, even after months of careful consideration and sleepless nights filled with whispered discussions. "The children are asking questions again," Kate said softly, not turning from the window. Her voice carried the exhaustion of a mother trying to shield her little ones from adult complexities while preparing them for a life-changing moment. William moved beside her, his reflection joining hers in the glass. "George asked me yesterday if we were moving because he did something wrong. Charlotte keeps drawing pictures of our family with sad faces." He paused, his throat tightening. "And Louis, he just hugs me tighter every night at bedtime like he knows something is different." The couple had spent countless evenings in this very room, planning royal engagements, discussing charity work, and dreaming about their children's futures. The walls held memories of birthday parties, quiet family dinners, and intimate conversations that shaped their marriage. Now every familiar object seemed to whisper goodbye. Kate finally turned to face her husband, her eyes reflecting a mixture of determination and heartbreak. "We're doing the right thing, aren't we? For them? For us?" The questions had haunted her for weeks, but she needed to hear his reassurance once more. William reached for her hands, finding them trembling despite her composed exterior. "When my mother made difficult choices, she always said that love sometimes means letting go of what the world expects so you can hold on to what truly matters." His voice cracked slightly as he mentioned Diana, whose own struggles with royal life had shaped his understanding of the impossible balance between duty and family. The decision to step back from their senior royal roles hadn't come easily. It was born from late-night conversations about their children's happiness, about the relentless pressure of public scrutiny, and about their desire to give George, Charlotte, and Louis a chance at something closer to normal childhood. They had watched other royal families navigate these same waters, some successfully and others with painful consequences. "I keep thinking about all the people who believed in us," Kate whispered, her composure beginning to crack. "The charities we've supported, the communities we've visited. They trusted us to be there for them, and now we're showing them that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit when something isn't working." William finished gently. "We're not abandoning our responsibilities, Kate. We're reshaping them in a way that lets us be better parents and better partners." The morning light had grown stronger, illuminating the family photographs scattered across Kate's desk. Pictures of their wedding day, christenings, Christmas mornings, and casual moments captured during rare private times. Each image told part of their story, the fairy tale romance that had captured the world's imagination and the real-life challenges that had tested their bond. A soft knock interrupted their moment. Their private secretary entered with the day's schedule, a carefully orchestrated series of farewell visits that would mark the beginning of their transition. The list included longtime supporters, close friends within the royal household, and the staff members who had become like family over the years. "Your Highnesses, the car will be ready in 30 minutes for your visit to the Children's Hospital," the secretary announced, her own voice betraying emotion. She had worked with the couple for years and understood the significance of today's events. Kate nodded, straightening her shoulders in a gesture William recognized as her way of summoning strength. "Please give us just a few more minutes," she requested, and the secretary quietly withdrew. Alone again, the couple embraced, holding each other with the intensity of two people preparing to walk through fire together. The weight of their decision pressed down on them, but so did their certainty that they were choosing their family's well-being over public expectation. "The hardest part will be explaining it to everyone else," William murmured against Kate's hair. "Making them understand that this isn't about running away or giving up. It's about growing into who we need to be for our children." Kate pulled back to look into his eyes, seeing the same mixture of fear and hope that she felt in her own heart. Then we'll face it together, just like we always have. And maybe, just maybe, we'll show other families that it's okay to choose happiness over tradition sometimes. The clock on the mantel chimed, marking another hour in what would be remembered as one of the most emotionally charged days in recent royal history. Outside, the world continued its normal rhythm, unaware that inside the palace walls, two people were gathering courage for a journey that would touch millions of hearts and spark conversations about love, duty, and the courage to choose your own path. As they prepared to face the day ahead, William and Kate held hands one last time in the room that had been their sanctuary. Tomorrow, these walls would belong to their past, but the love and strength they had found within them would guide them toward whatever came next. The first chapter of their farewell was about to begin, and with it, a story that would remind the world that even those born into privilege sometimes have to fight for the right to protect what matters most. The children's hospital corridor buzzed with nervous energy as staff members prepared for what they knew would be an emotionally charged visit. Word had spread quietly through the building that this might be one of the last official visits from the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge in their current roles. Nurses straightened their uniforms, doctors checked their schedules one more time, and the young patients who were well enough gathered in the main playroom with barely contained excitement. Kate walked through the familiar halls with a heavy heart, remembering her first visit to this same hospital years ago. She had been terrified then, worried about saying the wrong thing or not knowing how to comfort children facing unimaginable challenges. Now these visits had become some of the most meaningful parts of her royal duties, moments when protocol fell away and genuine human connection took its place. "Your Highness," called out a young nurse named Sarah, approaching with tears already forming in her eyes. "We heard, is it true? Are you really leaving us?" The question hung in the air like a physical weight. Kate felt William's presence beside her, steady and supportive, but she knew this conversation was one she needed to handle herself. These healthcare workers had become friends over the years, celebrating small victories together and mourning losses that touched them all. "We're not leaving in the way you might think," Kate said gently, taking Sarah's hands in hers. "Our commitment to the work that matters will never change. We'll just be doing it differently, in a way that allows us to be the parents our children need us to be." The explanation felt inadequate even as she said it. How could she make anyone understand the impossible position they had found themselves in? The constant balancing act between royal duties and family life had become unsustainable, not because they didn't love the work, but because they loved their children more. William knelt down beside a small boy named Tommy, who had been receiving treatment at the hospital for months. The child's face lit up with recognition, and he immediately launched into an excited story about the drawing he had made for the prince. As William listened intently, giving Tommy his complete attention, Kate watched the interaction with a mixture of pride and heartbreak. These moments, when her husband's natural warmth and genuine care shone through, were exactly why their decision hurt so much. They weren't walking away because they didn't care about their roles or the people they served. They were walking away because caring so deeply, while trying to raise 3 young children in the public eye, had begun to tear them apart. Dr. Martinez, the hospital's head pediatrician, approached Kate with understanding in his eyes. He had worked with royal visitors for over 2 decades and had seen how different William and Kate were from others who came for photo opportunities and quick handshakes. "You know," he said quietly, so only she could hear, "in all my years here, I've never seen royal visitors who connected with our patients the way you two do. The children don't see titles when they look at you. They see people who genuinely care about their stories." Kate's composure wavered as she watched William, now sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by several children who were showing him their artwork. His laughter was genuine as 8-year-old Mia explained her colorful painting of a princess who looked suspiciously like Kate. "That's exactly why this is so hard," Kate whispered back to Dr. Martinez. "We love this work. We love these children. But we have 3 children at home who need us to love them just as completely, and lately we haven't been able to do both well enough. The doctor nodded with the wisdom of someone who had spent his career helping families make impossible choices. "The children here will understand," he assured her. "They know better than most what it means to put family first." As the visit continued, Kate found herself memorizing details she might have overlooked before. The way the afternoon light streamed through the playroom windows, creating rainbows on the walls. The sound of children's laughter mixing with the quiet hum of medical equipment. The proud smiles of parents who had been invited to meet them, many clutching phones to capture what might be their last photos with the royal couple. A teenage patient named James approached Kate near the end of their visit. He was 15, old enough to understand the complexities of adult decisions, but young enough to speak with complete honesty. "I heard you're stepping back from being royals," he said directly. "My mom thinks you're being selfish, but I think you're being brave. My dad walked away from a job that was killing him to spend more time with us before I got sick. Best decision he ever made." The teenager's words hit Kate like a physical blow, not because they were harsh, but because they were exactly what she needed to hear. From the mouth of a child fighting for his life came validation that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step away from what everyone expects of you. William joined them just as James finished speaking, and Kate could see in her husband's face that he had overheard the conversation. The teenager looked between them with the perceptive eyes of someone who had learned to read adults' emotions through months of medical appointments and difficult conversations. "Your kids are lucky," James added simply. "Not everyone gets parents who put them first." As they prepared to leave the hospital, Kate and William were overwhelmed by an impromptu gathering in the main entrance. Word had spread throughout the building, and staff members from every department had come to say goodbye. Some held flowers, others had hastily made cards, and many simply wanted to shake their hands one more time. The moment that broke Kate's carefully maintained composure came when little Tommy ran up to her with a crayon drawing. It showed two stick figures labeled Prince William and Princess Kate, surrounded by tiny hearts. At the bottom, in wobbly child's handwriting, were the words, "Thank you for loving us." Tears streamed down Kate's face as she knelt to hug the small boy. Around them, there wasn't a dry eye in the room, and she realized that their farewell had become something much more powerful than she had anticipated. It had become a moment of shared understanding about love, sacrifice, and the courage required to choose your family's needs over public expectations. William's arm around her shoulders provided strength as they finally walked toward their car. Behind them, the hospital staff continued waving from windows and doorways, their faces reflecting the same mixture of sadness and support that would follow the royal couple throughout their farewell journey. The second part of their goodbye had shown them something unexpected, that sometimes the people you're worried about disappointing are the ones who understand your choices best of all. The royal residence felt different that evening, as if the walls themselves understood the weight of the conversations happening within them. Family photographs lined the hallway leading to the children's bedrooms, capturing years of Christmas, mornings, summer holidays, and quiet family moments that the public rarely saw. Tonight, these images seemed to tell a story of evolution, showing how three small faces had grown and changed while their parents navigated the complex world of royal duty. George, now old enough to sense the undercurrents of adult conversation, sat cross-legged on his bedroom floor, organizing his toy cars with unusual focus. At 11, he possessed his father's thoughtful nature and his mother's intuitive understanding of people's emotions. He had noticed the whispered phone calls, the serious faces during breakfast, and the way his parents hugged him just a little longer at bedtime. "Dad," he said without looking up from his toys, "are we moving because people don't like us anymore?" William, who had come to read bedtime stories, felt his heart crack slightly. He sat down beside his eldest son, choosing his words carefully. The truth was complicated. They weren't leaving because of dislike, but because sometimes love requires difficult choices that others might not understand. "George, do you remember when we talked about how sometimes grown-ups have to make hard decisions to protect the people they love most?" William began, his voice gentle but serious. "Your mom and I love our work, and we love the people we help. But we love you, Charlotte, and Louis more than anything else in the world." The boy finally looked up, his eyes reflecting a maturity beyond his years. Like when you choose to come to my football match instead of that important meeting? Exactly. Like that. William smiled, relieved that his son could grasp the concept. But this is a bigger version of that choice. We're choosing to be the parents you need us to be, even if it means disappointing some other people. Down the hall, Kate was having a similar conversation with Charlotte, who had been unusually quiet during dinner. The 8-year-old sat on her bed, surrounded by her favorite stuffed animals, her face serious in the way that reminded Kate so much of William's thoughtful expressions. "Mummy, will we still be a royal family?" Charlotte asked, her small voice carrying concerns that seemed too big for such a young child to bear. Kate sat beside her daughter, pulling her close. "We'll always be who we are, sweetheart. Being royal isn't about living in a palace or having people bow to you. It's about caring for others and using whatever gifts you have to help make the world better." "But people on the television were saying mean things about you yesterday," Charlotte whispered, and Kate's heart sank as she realized her daughter had overheard news reports or adult conversations she shouldn't have been exposed to. "Sometimes when people don't understand why someone makes a choice, they say unkind things," Kate explained, stroking Charlotte's hair. "But the people who truly know us, who see how much we love each other and love helping others, they understand. Just like your friends at school would understand if you had to miss a party to take care of a sick family member." In the nursery, Louis presented a different challenge entirely. At 5 years old, he couldn't fully grasp the concept of stepping back from royal duties, but he could sense the emotional tension in his home. He had become clingy, refusing to let his parents leave his sight for long periods and asking repeatedly if they were going somewhere without him. "Story, Daddy," Louis demanded as William entered his room, clutching his favorite book about a little prince who went on adventures. The irony wasn't lost on William as he settled into the rocking chair they had used for bedtime stories since Louis was a baby. As William read about the fictional prince's journey to find happiness, he found himself changing subtle details in the story, making it about a prince who realized that the greatest adventure was spending time with the people he loved most. Louis listened intently, his small hand resting on his father's arm as if to make sure he wouldn't disappear. Later that evening, after all 3 children were finally asleep, William and Kate sat in their own bedroom, emotionally drained from the day's conversations. The children's questions had been harder to navigate than any hostile interview or critical newspaper article they had ever faced. "George asked me if we were disappointing Granny," Kate said quietly, referring to Queen Elizabeth. "I didn't know how to answer that." William ran his hands through his hair, a gesture Kate recognized as his way of processing stress. "I spoke with her yesterday. She said something that surprised me." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "She told me that she wished she had been braver about putting family first when my father was young. That maybe things would have been different if she had been willing to challenge tradition more." The weight of that revelation settled between them. The Queen's support, even privately given, meant more than either of them had expected. It validated their choice in a way that no public opinion poll or media commentary ever could. "Charlotte overheard news reports about us," Kate admitted. "She's worried that people think we're selfish or ungrateful." I tried to explain, but how do you tell an 8-year-old that sometimes doing the right thing for your family means disappointing strangers who don't really know you? The same way my mother probably tried to explain her choices to Harry and me, William replied. By living the truth of your decision every day and hoping your children see that love guided every step. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, both lost in their own thoughts about the conversations with their children and the greater implications of their decision. The house felt peaceful now, with all 3 little ones sleeping soundly despite the emotional weight of the day. "They're going to be okay," Kate said finally, more to convince herself than to make a statement. "Children are more resilient than we give them credit for, and they have each other." William nodded, remembering how he and Harry had navigated their own childhood challenges together. "And they have us completely present and available in a way we haven't been able to be for a while." The third part of their farewell journey had shown them that their children, despite their young ages, possessed in wisdom and understanding that both surprised and comforted their parents. As they prepared for sleep in what would soon be their former home, William and Kate felt a mixture of sadness for what they were leaving behind and hope for what they were moving toward. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and more difficult goodbyes, but tonight, their family was together under one roof, and for the first time in months, that felt like enough. The morning of their final public engagement arrived with unexpected autumn sunshine, casting golden light through the windows of their private apartment. Kate stood before her dressing table, her hands trembling slightly as she fastened a pearl necklace that had belonged to Diana. Today's choice of jewelry felt symbolic, wearing something that connected her to William's mother, who had also struggled with the balance between royal duty and personal happiness. William appeared in the doorway, already dressed in his formal suit, watching his wife prepare for what they both knew would be one of the most scrutinized appearances of their royal career. The media had been speculating for weeks about their farewell tour, and today's visit to their long-standing patronage, a children's literacy charity, would be covered by dozens of photographers and reporters from around the world. "How are you feeling?" he asked softly, moving to stand behind her so they could see each other's reflections in the mirror. "Like I'm about to walk onto a stage where everyone knows the ending except the actors," Kate replied with a shaky laugh. "The children at the center have been preparing special presentations for us. They have no idea this is goodbye." The charity had been one of Kate's first patronages as a new royal, chosen because of her genuine passion for early childhood development and education. Over the years, she had visited dozens of times, often bringing her own children to interact with the kids in the program. The staff had become friends, and the children had grown up seeing her not as a distant royal figure, but as someone who genuinely cared about their progress and dreams. Their car pulled up to the modest community center that housed the literacy program, and immediately they could see the difference in today's atmosphere. The usual crowd of curious onlookers had swelled to include people holding signs of support, families who had traveled from other cities just to say goodbye, and media, representatives with cameras ready to capture every emotion. "Look." William pointed to a group of elderly women standing near the entrance, holding a banner that read, "Thank you for caring about our children." One of them was Mrs. Patterson, an 82-year-old volunteer reader who had worked with Kate on numerous occasions and had become something of a surrogate grandmother figure during their visits. As they walked through the crowd toward the building, the response was unlike anything they had experienced before. People weren't just clapping politely or waving phones for photos. They were calling out personal messages of support, holding children up to wave goodbye, and many were openly crying. The emotion was palpable and overwhelming. "Your Highness, Your Highness," called out a young mother holding a toddler. "Thank you for showing us that being a good parent is the most important job." Kate turned toward the voice, and for a moment the carefully maintained royal composure cracked. She approached the woman, taking the little one's hand gently. "What's your daughter's name?" she asked. "Catherine," the mother replied with tears in her eyes. "Named after you. You've shown all of us that it's okay to choose our children's happiness over what everyone else expects." Inside the community center, the staff had arranged a celebration that they hadn't known would become a farewell party. Children from ages 3 to 10 sat in a colorful circle on the carpet, fidgeting with excitement as they waited to share their stories and poems. Their teacher, Miss Rodriguez, had worked with royal visitors before, but had never seen children as genuinely excited as they were to see William and Kate. 8-year-old Aisha was the first to stand up, holding a handwritten story about a princess who learned to fly. As she read in her clear, proud voice, Kate found herself fighting back tears, thinking about her own Charlotte at home and how reading had become such a precious part of their bedtime routine. The princess realized she didn't need a castle to be happy, Aisha concluded. She just needed her family and friends who loved her for who she really was. The innocent wisdom of the child's story hit both William and Kate with unexpected force. Here was an 8-year-old, unknowingly articulating the exact truth they had struggled to accept about their own lives. 6-year-old Marcus followed with a poem about courage, written with his teacher's help, but delivered with pure enthusiasm. Sometimes being brave means doing something different, even when people might not understand why, he recited, his small voice carrying across the room. As more children shared their creations, Each story seemed to reflect themes of family, love, and the courage to make difficult choices. Kate began to wonder if the teachers had somehow prepared these presentations, knowing about the farewell. But when she caught Miss Rodriguez's eye, she saw genuine surprise at how perfectly the children's words matched the moment. "These are the stories they've been working on for weeks," Miss Rodriguez whispered during a brief pause. "They chose their own themes. I don't think it's a coincidence that they're all about finding happiness and being true to yourself." The most powerful moment came when 10-year-old Jamie, who had been in the program since he was 4, stood up with a picture he had drawn. It showed stick figures of William and Kate surrounded by dozens of smaller figures representing all the children they had met over the years. "We wanted to give this to you so you won't forget us when you go to your new life," Jamie said seriously. Miss Rodriguez explained that sometimes grown-ups have to make changes so their own children can be happy. "We think that's really important, because everyone's children should get to be happy." William had to clear his throat several times before he could respond. "Jamie, we could never forget any of you. You've taught us so much about what matters most in life, and do you know what? We're not really going anywhere. We're just changing how we show up for the people we care about." Kate knelt down to be at Jamie's eye level, accepting the drawing with hands that shook slightly. "This picture is going to hang in our new home, in a place where we'll see it every single day. And every time we look at it, we'll remember how much you've all grown and how proud we are of every single one of you." The formal program concluded with all the children singing a song they had learned about friendship and saying goodbye. Their young voices filled the room with pure, uncomplicated emotion that cut through all the complexity and media speculation surrounding the royal couple's decision. As William and Kate prepared to leave, Mrs. Patterson approached them one final time. The elderly volunteer had witnessed decades of royal visits, but she pulled Kate aside with something important to share. "Dear, I've seen a lot of people come through those doors over the years," she said in her gentle voice. "Celebrities, politicians, other royals. But you two, you saw these children as human beings, not photo opportunities. You remembered their names, asked about their families, celebrated their progress. That's not something you learn from protocol training. That's who you are as people." She pressed a small wrapped package into Kate's hands. "This is for your children. It's a book of stories written by all the kids you've met here over the years. They wanted your little ones to know that once upon a time, their parents spent their days helping other children learn to dream." The 4th chapter of their farewell had revealed something unexpected. Their decision to prioritize family hadn't disappointed the people they served. Instead, it had inspired them, showing children and parents alike that love sometimes requires the courage to walk away from expectations and toward what truly matters. The private family dinner at Sandringham House carried an atmosphere unlike any royal gathering in recent memory. Queen Elizabeth sat at the head of the long mahogany table that had witnessed countless family celebrations and difficult conversations over the decades. Tonight, the usual formal protocol had been set aside in favor of an intimate farewell meal for William, Kate, and their children. George, Charlotte, and Louis sat between their parents, their best behavior clearly coached, but genuine affection for their great-grandmother evident in their excited chatter about school and hobbies. The Queen listened with the patient attention she reserved for the youngest members of her family, asking thoughtful questions about Charlotte's art classes and Louis's favorite bedtime stories. King Charles sat across from his son, his face reflecting a complex mixture of understanding and concern. As someone who had spent decades navigating the tension between personal happiness and royal duty, he understood William's struggle in ways that perhaps no one else could. His own relationship with Camilla had taught him about the courage required to choose love over convention. "Granny," Charlotte said during a brief pause in conversation, "Daddy says we're going to have a different kind of royal life. What does that mean?" The Queen set down her fork thoughtfully, considering how to answer an 8-year-old's question about something that constitutional experts were still debating. "Well, my dear," she began in her measured tone, "being royal isn't really about living in palaces or wearing crowns. It's about using whatever gifts you have to help other people. Your parents will still be doing that, just in their own way." William felt a wave of gratitude toward his grandmother, whose public support had been carefully measured but whose private encouragement had been unwavering. The previous week she had spent an hour with him in her private study, sharing stories about her own early struggles with duty and family that had never appeared in any biography. "You know," the Queen had told him during that conversation, "when I was young, I thought duty meant always saying yes to what others expected. I've learned, perhaps too late, that sometimes duty means having the courage to say no when something isn't serving the greater good, including your family's well-being." Now, watching her great-grandchildren laugh over dessert, the Queen seemed to be seeing the wisdom of William and Kate's choice playing out in real time. These three children, who would have grown up under the intense pressure of constant public scrutiny, were about to be given the gift of a more normal childhood. After dinner, the family moved to the sitting room where a fire crackled in the ancient fireplace. The children had been allowed to stay up past their usual bedtime for this special evening, and they settled on the carpet near the fire while the adults took their traditional seats in well-worn armchairs. "I have something for you," the Queen announced, producing a small leather box that she handed to Kate. Inside was a simple gold locket, unadorned but clearly precious. "This belonged to your husband's mother. She wore it often during the early years of her marriage when she was trying to find her place in all of this." Kate's hands trembled as she lifted the locket from its velvet cushion. Inside was a tiny photograph of William and Harry as young boys, their faces bright with the innocence of childhood. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone in the room. Diana's jewelry with pictures of her sons being passed to the woman who was now making her own difficult choices about protecting children from the pressures of royal life. "She would have understood what you're doing," King Charles said quietly, his voice carrying years of regret about how Diana's story had unfolded. "She would have been proud that you're putting the children first." Prince Harry, who had arrived earlier that afternoon with a subdued demeanor, finally spoke up. "She would have done exactly what you're doing if she had been brave enough," he said, looking directly at his brother. "You're not just protecting George, Charlotte, and Louis. You're honoring her memory by refusing to repeat the mistakes that cost her so much." The conversation that followed was unlike any the royal family had shared in years. Without the constraints of public scrutiny or official protocols, they talked honestly about the cost of royal duty, the impact on relationships and mental health, and the importance of breaking cycles that had caused pain for generations. "The institution will survive," the Queen said with characteristic directness. "It has survived much worse than two people choosing to prioritize their children's happiness. But children only get one childhood, and parents only get one chance to get it right." As the evening wound down, the children had fallen asleep in various chairs around the fire, exhausted by the excitement and emotional weight of the day. William and Kate looked at their sleeping faces and saw the innocence they were fighting to preserve. "There's something else," King Charles said, as the adults prepared to carry the children to their bedrooms. "The cottage in Norfolk, the one where you spent your early married years, it's yours for as long as you want it. Consider it a wedding gift that's a few years late." The offer was generous beyond words. Anmer Hall had been their private sanctuary during the first years of their marriage and George's early childhood. It represented a time when they had managed to carve out normal family life despite royal obligations, and returning there felt like coming full circle. Later that night, as William and Kate tucked their children into beds in the same wing where William had slept as a child, the symbolism wasn't lost on them. These rooms had witnessed his own struggles with the pressure of royal expectations, his grief over his mother's death, and his gradual understanding of how to balance duty with personal happiness. "I'm scared," Kate admitted as they finally settled into their own room. "Not about leaving the royal duties. I know that's right. But about whether we'll regret this someday. Whether the children will understand when they're older." William pulled her close, both of them looking out the window at the estate grounds where he had played as a child, where his own father had learned to navigate royal life, and where generations of their family had grappled with the same impossible balance between personal happiness and public service. "Do you remember what George said when we told him we were moving?" William asked. "He said, 'Will we still be able to help people?' Not, 'Will we still be famous?' or 'Will people still know who we are?' He wanted to know if we could still help people." Kate smiled at the memory. Their 11-year-old had instinctively understood that service and kindness weren't dependent on titles or palaces. If they had raised children who thought first about helping others rather than about their own status, then perhaps they had already succeeded at the most important part of their royal duties. The fifth part of their farewell had given them something unexpected: their family's blessing and the understanding that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for an institution you care about is to have the courage to evolve beyond its current limitations. 6 months later, the morning sun streamed through the kitchen windows of Anmer Hall as Kate prepared breakfast for her family in a scene that would have been impossible during their formal royal years. George sat at the worn wooden table, carefully, reading aloud from a book while Charlotte helped Louis with his shoelaces. The sounds were beautifully ordinary: cereal bowls clinking, pages turning, and the comfortable chatter of children who no longer had to whisper in their own home. William entered through the back door, his hair still damp from his morning, run through the Norfolk countryside. The transformation in his appearance was subtle but profound. The constant tension lines around his eyes had softened, and there was an ease in his movements that spoke of a man who no longer carried the weight of everyone else's expectations on his shoulders. "Dad, can we go to the village fair today?" Charlotte asked, her face bright with the kind of spontaneous excitement that had been nearly impossible when every public appearance required security details and media coordination. "Of course," William replied, ruffling her hair as he reached for his coffee. "Just us, like any other family." The phrase "like any other family" had become a sort of mantra in their household. It represented everything they had gained in exchange for everything they had given up. George could now ride his bicycle to his friend's house without a security detail. Charlotte could join the local Girl Guide troupe without photographers documenting her every badge earned. Louis could throw spectacular tantrums in grocery stores without them appearing in tabloid newspapers the next day. Kate watched her husband interact with their children and marveled at the change 6 months had brought. The man who used to check his phone constantly for royal scheduling updates now gave his complete attention to Louis's elaborate story about the castle he had built with blocks. The father, who once had to leave birthday parties early for state functions, was now helping Charlotte plan a sleepover with her new school friends. The decision hadn't been without its challenges. The first few months had brought intense media scrutiny, criticism from traditionalists who felt they had abandoned their duty, and moments of doubt when they questioned whether they had made the right choice. There had been lonely evenings when Kate missed the camaraderie of royal staff and meaningful work with charities that had become like family. But there had also been unexpected joys. George had joined the local cricket team and discovered a passion for the sport that had nothing to do with royal patronage and everything to do with his own natural talent. Charlotte had made a best friend named Emma, whose mother treated Kate not as a former royal, but as another school mum trying to navigate packed lunches and homework schedules. The village of Sandringham had embraced them with protective warmth. Local shopkeepers treated them with friendly respect but no fanfare. The postman, Mr. Davies, had become a regular source of local gossip and weather predictions. Mrs. Henderson from the neighboring farm brought fresh eggs twice a week and stayed for tea, sharing stories about her own grandchildren that reminded Kate how precious these ordinary moments truly were. "I got a letter from Jamie," Kate announced, referring to the 10-year-old from the literacy charity who had given them the drawing on their final official visit. She held up an envelope decorated with careful crayon drawings. "He says he's reading chapter books now and wants to be a teacher when he grows up." The correspondence with children from their former patronages had continued, though now it came through personal channels rather than official royal mail. These letters had become treasures, proof that their impact hadn't ended when they stepped back from formal duties, but had evolved into something more personal and lasting. William opened his laptop to check emails from the small foundation they had established to continue their charitable work on their own terms. Without the constraints of royal protocol, they could respond more quickly to needs, fund innovative programs that might have been too risky for official royal support, and work directly with grassroots organizations that rarely had access to formal royal patronage. "The Children's Hospital wants to name the new wing after us," he told Kate, reading from an email. "Not the Duke and Duchess wing, the William and Kate wing. Dr. Martinez says the kids requested it specifically because they want other children to know that the people who helped build it really cared about them as individuals. The honor moved them both deeply, representing something more meaningful than any official royal recognition they had ever received. This acknowledgement came not from institutional protocol, but from the genuine affection of children whose lives they had touched. As the family prepared for their day at the village fair, Kate caught her reflection in the hallway mirror. The woman looking back at her seemed younger somehow, despite the passage of time. The constant tension of trying to be perfect for public consumption had been replaced by the comfortable confidence of someone living authentically. At the fair, they moved through the crowd like any other family. George won a stuffed animal at the ring toss, Charlotte got her face painted like a butterfly, and Louis rode the miniature train 4 times in a row. When other families recognized them, the interactions were warm but respectful. A wave here, a brief conversation there, but no requests for formal photographs or autographs. "Look, Mummy," Louis called out, pointing to a little girl about his age who was crying because she had dropped her ice cream. Without being asked, he walked over and offered to share his own treat. Kate watched the simple act of kindness with pride, knowing that this generosity came not from royal training but from a heart that had been allowed to develop naturally. As afternoon faded into evening, the family sat on a blanket watching the sunset over the Norfolk countryside. In the distance, they could see the lights of Sandringham House, where other family members continued the work of formal royal duty. There was no resentment in their gaze toward that life, only gratitude for the time they had served and peace about the choice they had made. "Do you ever miss it?" George asked, following his parents' gaze toward the grand house on the horizon. Kate and William exchanged a look that held 6 months of discoveries about themselves and their family. They missed some aspects: the meaningful work, the ability to spotlight important causes, the satisfaction of representing something larger than themselves, but they had learned that service and love could take many forms. "We miss parts of it," William answered honestly. "But we don't miss the pressure, the constant scrutiny, or the feeling that we couldn't give you the attention you deserved. Most importantly, we don't miss worrying that you might grow up feeling like you had to choose between being yourselves and making other people happy." Charlotte, now 8 and wise beyond her years, nodded thoughtfully. "I like that people at school know me as Charlotte who's good at art, not Charlotte the princess." As they packed up their blanket and prepared to head home, Kate reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. The farewell that had seemed so difficult 6 months ago now felt like the beginning of something beautiful, rather, than the end of something important. Their story had moved millions, not because it was about royalty stepping away from duty, but because it was about parents choosing to put their children's well-being above society's expectations. In doing so, they had given other families permission to make difficult choices guided by love rather than obligation. The final chapter of their farewell had revealed the most important truth of all, that grace isn't about maintaining perfect appearances or meeting everyone else's expectations. True grace comes from having the courage to live authentically, love completely, and trust that happiness found in service to your own family can be just as meaningful as any crown or title. As they walked home under the stars, 3 children, running ahead on a country lane while their parents followed hand in hand, William and Kate had found something more valuable than any royal privilege. They had found themselves.